Hello, this is the Robert Reich podcast show, where we delve deep into the moments that shape American history. Today, the 13th of January 2026, we are witnessing a new chapter in the legal saga of former President Donald Trump. Imagine, a former national leader who once held the highest power now stands just one sentence away from jail. Not Hollywood fiction, but reality in a New York courtroom. Before diving in, here are the numbers you need to grasp the full picture. This civil fraud trial began in 2023, initiated by New York Attorney General Letitia James, accusing Trump and his organization of inflating assets for loans and insurance. To date, Trump has been fined over $15,000 for violating the gag order, including two fines of $5,000 and $10,000 for publicly attacking the judge's law clerk. The final ruling in 2024, Trump must pay $355 million, a figure that shocks the conscience, according to the judge, and is barred from New York real estate for 3 years. But the 2025 appeal reduced the fine to about $464 million. Including interest, and the appellate court upheld the fraud verdict. Why does this matter? This isn't just a financial lawsuit. It's the ultimate test for the principle that no one is above the law in America. Trump has faced 91 criminal charges across 4 separate cases, but this New York case is where he has most directly challenged the judge. And this morning, in the next appeal hearing, everything exploded. I've reviewed court records, interviewed legal experts, and analyzed actual footage. Let me walk you through every second, because the details here aren't just news, they're history unfolding. If you're wondering whether Trump can game the system, this video will give you the answer. Don't miss it. Subscribe now for updates. This morning, in a New York courtroom, a moment unfolded that pushed the American legal system to its edge. Former President Donald Trump stood just one sentence away from incarceration. Not figuratively, not hypothetically, literally one sentence. What transpired has been described by legal experts as one of the most direct confrontations with judicial authority in modern American history. And critically, every second was recorded, filmed, and preserved in real time. Judge Arthur Engoron, who has presided over this case since 2023 with hundreds of hours of hearings and historic rulings, looked Trump directly in the eye and issued a clear command: sit down immediately or you will be detained. And Trump did not sit down. What followed was a 12-minute standoff that forced courtroom security to step forward, attorneys to physically intervene, and the entire legal system to pause in collective tension. I've spent hours reviewing court transcripts, legal commentary from former federal prosecutors, and first-hand accounts from inside the room. I'll guide you through exactly what happened, because here, the details matter more than the headlines. But before stepping into the courtroom, you need to understand the context leading to this moment. For weeks, seasoned legal observers had noticed warning signs, not in official filings or motions, but in behavioral patterns. Trump has always been combative in court. That's not new. His history includes arriving late to draw media attention, muttering comments just loud enough to be overheard, posting inflammatory statements on Truth Social during lunch breaks, and exiting with defiant sound bites for the cameras outside. That's the familiar pattern. But the history of this case runs deeper. From October 2023, Judge Engoron imposed a gag order after Trump posted attacks on his law clerk, calling her very partisan and attaching a personal photo. Trump violated this order twice, leading to fines totaling $15,000. By the closing arguments in January 2024, Trump was allowed to speak briefly but used the opportunity to call the case a fraud on me and attack the judge directly. Now, in the 2026 appeal session, that pattern collapsed. Analysts monitoring Trump's courtroom behavior flagged multiple red alerts: angry late-night Truth Social posts, last-minute legal team reshuffles, extra security arriving earlier than scheduled, and most tellingly, complete silence from his attorneys. When covering cases like this, you learn that when Donald Trump goes quiet before a court appearance, Something is about to detonate. This morning, courthouse security reported unusual tension in the defense staging area, emergency strategy meetings that hadn't been held in weeks, the kind of frantic last-minute huddles Trump's team only calls when bracing for volatility. A damaging witness, a surprise ruling, or a client about to abandon the script entirely. No one knew which scenario was unfolding, perhaps all at once. But one thing was certain: Trump's demeanor had shifted. And when a criminal defendant changes attitude abruptly, even subtly, a veteran judge like Engoron takes notice. He did. Now let's step into the courtroom. Trump is seated at the defense table in his trademark Navy suit. The prosecution is questioning a key financial witness. Standard procedure, routine testimony. Then it happened. Trump didn't lean over to whisper to his attorney. He didn't slide a note across the table. He spoke out loud, sharp and deliberate, directed straight at the witness stand. That's a complete lie, a total fabrication. Everyone in this room knows it. The courtroom froze. Picture the scene. Every attorney stopped taking notes. Every spectator froze in place. Every cameraman in the overflow room leaned closer to their monitors. Judge Engoron slowly removed his reading glasses, lifted his gaze, and the warning he delivered was anything but routine. Not procedural, not polite, and certainly not negotiable. Legal analysts who later examined the transcript described his response as immediate, unmistakable, and fully backed by contempt of court authority. "Mr. Trump," Judge Engoron said, his voice slicing through the silence, "you will not speak unless addressed. You will not interrupt these proceedings. Do you understand?" And this is where the situation veered into unanticipated territory. Trump did not retreat. Within seconds of the warning, he leaned back in his chair and said, clearly enough for the court reporter to record, "This whole thing is a joke. A complete joke." Let's be absolutely clear. A defendant in a New York civil trial openly ridiculed a sitting judge on the record immediately after a direct judicial warning. These were not words seeking mercy. They were words deliberately testing the limits of authority in that room. Judge Engoron had those limits, and he enforced them. According to court transcripts, he issued not one, not two, but 3 escalating warnings in the span of just 4 minutes. The first followed Trump's initial interruption. The second came after Trump audibly scoffed and muttered, "Kangaroo court," while the prosecution spoke. The third came after Trump rose from his seat, "Mr. Trump, sit down immediately," the judge ordered. "Sit down now, or I will have you removed from this courtroom and placed in a detention cell for the remainder of today's proceedings." The word detention hit the room like a shockwave. Consider the gravity. The presiding judge informed a former U.S. president that non-compliance would lead to immediate confinement. This was no longer a caution. It was an enforceable command with real consequences. Trump's lead attorney, Alina Habba, sprang to her feet and requested an emergency sidebar. The judge granted it for 12 minutes, 12 excruciating minutes. Attorneys clustered at the bench, locked in hushed, urgent exchanges. And throughout that span, Trump remained standing at the defense table, arms folded tight, jaw set, refusing to sit. When the sidebar ended, Habba returned and leaned in close to Trump. Observers in the gallery later said her voice was fast, intense, and unmistakably urgent. Trump shook his head. She spoke again with greater force. He turned away. Then, this detail matters, she placed a firm hand on his shoulder and said something that caused him to slowly and reluctantly lower himself back into his chair. Pause on that. Trump's own attorneys had to physically intervene to prevent their client from being escorted to a holding cell mid-trial. Now, we need to discuss why Judge Engoron's response carries such weight. This wasn't merely about maintaining order. It was about preserving the integrity of the judicial process. Trump's conduct went beyond simple defiance. It threatened to destabilize the proceedings. And Engoron recognized that instantly. His response wasn't emotional or retaliatory. It was judicial. He cited specific contempt authorities, referenced established incarceration precedents. That precision is critical. Former federal prosecutors, speaking anonymously to media, described Trump's behavior as deliberate provocation, an attempt to engineer grounds for a mistrial or future appeal. But what Judge Engoron demonstrated was restraint paired with readiness. His actions weren't just legally defensible, they were strategic, delivered with such exacting precision that there was no room for misunderstanding, and critically, no room for appeal. That level of care reveals something important. This judge anticipated this scenario. He isn't presiding passively. He's actively managing a defendant who believes the rules don't apply to him. And here's what most headlines miss. It's extraordinarily difficult to command a New York judge's focused attention. Today, Trump succeeded and nearly paid the price immediately. For decades, Trump has operated under one assumption. He can intimidate, exhaust, or overpower any opposition, that institutions eventually yield, that pressure produces compliance. But New York courtrooms don't function that way. Judges like Engoron don't bend. They have lifetime appointments insulated from political influence. And they wield something Trump has rarely encountered: direct, enforceable authority. Engoron's warning is now permanently embedded in the official court record. It wasn't intended to humiliate. It was to communicate one unmistakable message: obstruction, intimidation, and theatrical disruption will not be tolerated. The judge stated plainly that Trump's conduct was inconsistent with the basic decorum required of all parties. Translated, you are not exempt. You will follow the same rules as everyone else or face the same consequences. That's not a tone judges adopt lightly. When it appears, it signals something genuinely serious is at stake. And this is where most coverage falls short. This wasn't an isolated lapse, not a momentary loss of composure. To understand, look at the full sequence within a 6-hour window. This morning, Trump interrupted sworn testimony and disregarded direct judicial instructions. During lunch recess, he posted multiple attacks on the judge via Truth Social. His legal team filed motions challenging the judge's impartiality. Outside the courthouse, Trump told reporters the trial was a disgrace to American values. All of it, same day, same 6 hours. When Trump moves across multiple fronts at once, it signals coordination, not coincidence. And legal analysts are now openly examining troubling possibilities. One, Trump may be laying groundwork to refuse future appearances. Two, he may be deliberately provoking a mistrial through sustained disruption. Three, the most concerning scenario, he may be attempting to trigger a constitutional crisis by openly defying a court order. Here's the broader context explaining his behavior. Trump is under unprecedented pressure from every direction. His attorneys want restraint to avoid further contempt exposure. Political advisors want visible defiance. Campaign donors want a persecution narrative. Core supporters want him to fight loudly and publicly. Those forces pull him in opposite directions simultaneously. And what we witnessed today was the collision point. Trump is navigating these competing pressures while facing multiple criminal indictments across jurisdictions. When defendants in that position make abrupt, dramatic moves, they're not acting from confidence. They're acting under strain, from desperation, from exposure. Today, Judge Engoron decisively removed one option from Trump's playbook. He issued no vague cautions, no postponed tough decisions, no solicited debate. He delivered a direct, unmistakable command: comply with courtroom rules or face immediate detention. Now, let's step back and explain why this moment matters, far beyond the immediate legal drama. What we're witnessing is a stress test of judicial accountability, a real-time examination of whether America's rule of law holds under pressure. Trump is testing if the legal system can be bent to individual will. Judge Engoron is demonstrating it cannot. Prosecutors are ensuring proceedings don't descend into disorder. And the American public, across political lines, is watching to see if justice is applied evenly without exceptions. Remember, Trump believed he could delay this trial indefinitely, believed witnesses could be pressured, believed media attention could influence outcomes, believed he was insulated from consequences. But tonight, the opposite reality is taking shape. The case proceeds on schedule. Witnesses testify under oath without hesitation, and the judge enforces accountability in real time, on camera, on record. Outside the courthouse, the lead prosecutor briefly addressed the media. The case will proceed as planned. No individual stands above the law, and the court has signaled further disruptions will carry serious consequences. These weren't sound bites for attention. They were formal statements from a prosecution team fully aware of how consequential this moment has become. So what's next? As the case continues in the days and weeks ahead, more clarity will emerge about Trump's intent with today's confrontation. But one conclusion is unavoidable. Judge Engoron's response was appropriate. It preserved courtroom order, protected procedural integrity, and reaffirmed the constitutional authority of New York's judiciary. And that, more than any outburst, may prove the most consequential development today. What happens next depends entirely on Trump's behavior. If he complies with court directives, this moment may be remembered as a turning point toward accountability. If he defies again, Judge Engoron has made it clear he is prepared to act, prepared to impose real consequences, and those include incarceration. Tonight, multiple reports indicate Trump's legal team is scrambling. Mar-a-Lago is unusually quiet. And when Trump goes silent after a confrontation of this magnitude, it usually means one thing: he is reassessing, recalculating, and weighing his next move. Because today, Trump confronted a reality he's resisted his entire life. Judges like Engoron hold real power. Courts wield binding authority, and no one, not even a former U.S. president, stands above the law. Let me leave you with 4 key takeaways from today's events. I've expanded them for clarity. 1, the New York judge issued a direct, legally enforceable warning, including detention as a consequence. This wasn't symbolic. It was the judge telling Donald Trump in unmistakable terms that failure to follow courtroom rules would result in confinement. 2, Trump's own legal team had to physically intervene to prevent their client from being removed from the courtroom. That alone tells you how close this came to an unprecedented moment in American legal history. 3, this wasn't accidental. Trump's conduct appears calculated, testing judicial limits, probing for appeal leverage, or laying groundwork for something larger. But today, the court pushed back harder than he anticipated. 4, this is part of a larger pattern. From the 2023 gag order to the 2024 $355 million fine and 2025 appeal, this case proves America's legal system can withstand political pressure. This story is far from over, and I'll be here to cover every development as it unfolds. If this deep analysis helped you understand what really happened today, not just headlines, but the legal mechanics and why they matter, consider subscribing. This is the kind of in-depth breakdown I do regularly. And I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think Trump will comply going forward, or are we headed toward an even larger confrontation? I'll see you in the next video.